Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. That is Jack. I am Conrad, and this is the 45 Match Week 13 preview. It feels like Match Week 12 just ended because it did. Just yesterday, we have the odd midweek matches. First week without European football in a while, and what do? And no international break. They cram more Premier League matches, and they're trying to catch up, right? They got a little bit of a late start.
We're not really complaining that much.
No, but it's the Premier League, the managers probably are.
They definitely are, especially Jurgen Klopp. He had his own problems that he's caused himself with his selections, but it's going to be a packed schedule. We talked about it last episode, 17 days,
Which
40
you should
Premier
totally
League
go
matches.
watch, by the way.
Yeah, it's going to be a great next couple of weeks. Very excited for it, but it's going to mean that not a ton of rest for most of these sides.
No, it's going to be the draw for the next round of the European matches just came out this morning. Feels like it's already been 2 days ago. So lots to look forward to heading up. First up for us, Wolves and Chelsea. Wolves have lost their last two, failing to score against both Liverpool and Villa, following the loss of Raul Jimenez in that 2-1 win over Arsenal. Fabio Silva looked good against Villa, but he won't find it easy against Chelsea either. Wolves sit 13th on 17 and need at least a point here at the Molineux. We talked about it in the Week 12 wrap-up show, again, which you should totally go watch right now. Chelsea have gotten their wins only against the bottom half thus far. So they're fifth on 22 points, just 3 off the top of the table. Wolves are better than a bottom half team, and I don't know whether Havertz and Werner come in. Pulisic may be healthy here, but Havertz and Werner were both lackluster in that loss against Everton.
Yeah, I think we mentioned last time how Chelsea have the unfortunate statistic of not having gotten a win against a side who are currently in the top 10. And I think that beating Wolves wouldn't aid that statistic because they're currently in 13th place. But I think Wolves are one of the better teams.
That's what I'm saying. Wolves are a top half club.
They've had a bit of a touch-and-go run of form so far this season, so it would be a good points to get away at the Molineux for Chelsea. And it's going to be an interesting matchup because Havertz, he's played on the right at Bayer Leverkusen in his previous career. Not his previous career, but his previous time before arriving at Chelsea. But he hasn't had too much success there. Do they play him as a traditional 10, which he's much more used to? Do they stick Werner on the wing? Because for me, having Timo Werner and Kai Havertz as your wingers, they're not natural wingers, and it just feels like a waste of investment.
Better out there.
I would, and I'm hoping again because our guy, our American guy, we want to see him succeeding, compared to the Portuguese love that they have at Wolves. We love Wolves as well, but I think we do love our Christian.
It's going to be a draw. It's not going to be a pretty match, I don't think. I mean, both these clubs are coming off short rest, right? Short rest.
Yeah.
But
that'll be very interesting, though.
Leeds, Newcastle. So Newcastle heading to Ellen Road, looking for 3 straight wins. You don't say often about Newcastle these days. They're an up-and-down team, but they're 2-1 win over West Brom, followed that COVID-19 cancel or postponement, I should say. They went some 2 weeks with very little training. They were all in isolation, and they're still suffering from this. They've still got coaches and players, I think, that are still out. But they're 12th on 17 points with that game in hand now. Leeds are on a 3-match losing streak, 14th on 14 points. Leeds need this win. Newcastle, as I said, they've been up and down. But Leeds have taken 2 points from 5 home matches and 4 points from their last 18 available, right?
Yeah.
They started out brightly. Everybody loves it. But there's a chance Leeds may move from Tier 3 to Tier 2, which would allow for fans, as hard as that is to believe, in the stands come Wednesday. This is a Wednesday, 1 o'clock here in the U.S. Even 2,000 fans would be huge for them because it would be the first time fans get to see that club in the Premier League in 16 years. They've conceded 22 goals, which is second worst in the league, behind only West Brom, the 25 that they have shipped.
Yeah, that's not a good company to hold. And I think that you mentioned that home form. I think in part because imagine a full Elland Road and a season back in the Premier League. There's so many storylines that you've missed out on because of this pandemic. It's the world we live in. You have to accept reality. But imagine a full Anfield when they're finally champions, or Elland Road when they're back in the Premier League. And
Would be bumping.
we've seen this past weekend how many upset results. You think Everton beating Chelsea, Fulham getting a point against Liverpool, and Crystal Palace getting a point against Spurs. All had small crowds, and they played a decent impact. And that shows, well, when we get back, hopefully in the future, we'll be back to the Premier League.
Home field advantage is a real thing.
It is definitely a very real thing. You in the lower third mentioned that these are two totally different sides. Newcastle 17th in the XG department with just 11.9. Leeds second with 20.9. Newcastle have least shot creating actions in the league. Leeds fifth. And Newcastle have the least passes attempted. Leeds also fifth in that category. Now, Newcastle have had a bit more success than Leeds, which is the ultimate barometer. You don't really, at the end of the season, you don't say, oh, well, Steve, how many passes did you complete this year? You say, well, we finished ninth or whatever. So they're getting points. They're doing quite well. And both sides are at about the level they would expect to be in terms of the XG.
3 points difference in the club.
Exactly. So, and for Newcastle, if you win your game in hand against Aston Villa, as things stand, you go joint sixth. It's not bad. So I think it's going to be another tough one. I think both these first two matches we've talked about are going to be pretty close encounters. I could definitely see another draw here, but
I think Leeds are going to take this.
It is going to be interesting to see the attacking force of Leeds match the defensive prowess of Newcastle. And should the fans be there, I think it definitely could be a much different match.
I think Bielsa's not going to tip his hand on who he's starting this time, unlike his last match where he announced it the day before and everybody, he's like, doesn't want any backlash. He's never one to do what people expect him to do or really care what people think.
He's a great character. A great character.
Next up, Leicester. Everton. All right. Leicester are third on 24 points. Everton are seventh on 20 points. Leicester 2-1 win over the last three sides. 2-1 over their last three against sides that have combined for 19 points through 12 matches, including that 2-1 loss to Fulham. We've talked about their penalty situation. 30% of their goals have come from the spot. Everton, 1-0 loss to Leeds, 1-1 draw with Burnley, 1-0 win over Chelsea. Not a lot of goal scoring there. Pickford has looked better since he was rested, benched, whatever you want to call it. Everton's have problems at fullback with Ancelotti going with the classic four center backs lineup.
And it's not by choice. It's by necessity because of injuries.
James Rodriguez out against Chelsea. They looked very good without him. Leicester were third most of last season before folding in the final stretch after the restart, and it's not the first time a Rodgers coached team has faltered down the stretch. So I'm not sure who's who in this one. I don't know. Is Leicester truly a third place club, and is Everton the losing streak or the winning streak?
I think the answer to that question is probably not a third place club, considering their dependence on penalties. If 30% of your goals from the spot, you're a lot of times relying on some VAR calls to go in your favor. And ultimately,
they're creating the chances.
They are creating the chances. They're getting the points. And that's really all you can say at this point. Before we get kind of into about halfway, a bit further than that, we can kind of actually draw some conclusions on actually where are these teams at talent level-wise. James Maddison, a phenomenal creator, phenomenal midfielder for them. Jamie Vardy has the highest XG in the entire league. He's getting more chances. Yes, he has a lot of penalty takes for himself, but he's getting into situations to score goals on a frequent basis. And that's very valuable. And Everton, on the other side, Dominic Calvert-Lewin is the second highest overperformer in the league, only behind Heung-min Son, with 3.5 goals more than his XG, because he's been on fire for them.
Yeah, when he takes the shot.
And scoring.
Yeah.
He's great for that. He won them the penalty that Sigurdsson converted in the match against Chelsea. And I think an interesting comparison between Vardy and Calvert-Lewin is they're obviously much different players. Vardy likes to play on the last shoulder. Calvert-Lewin likes to get up in the air. They both have a lot of XGs, but Vardy, a lot of his are from the penalty spot, almost about half of them.
But his pace creates so much.
So this is going to be another great one. I think Everton are going to sit a bit deeper, try and nullify that Jamie Vardy threat. And it's going to be interesting to see how Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin play, because I liked them as a front two. I thought that was a very nice system for them. Richarlison, a bit wasteful with his chances so far this season. You have the plus 3.5 goals over the XG for Calvert-Lewin, but you have the -3 for Richarlison, so he's kind of equalizing his strike partner. But again, it's 3 for 3 on great matches where it's two incredibly even sides, and you don't know really who's who of them. And as we get not to the tail end of the season, but to the meatier part of the season, we get a better idea of where these teams are actually at.
Next up, the title tilt. Liverpool at Anfield to Spurs. Defend and counter. defend and counter, defend
Yes.
and counter.
Yes.
That's been the approach against Chelsea, win. Man City, win. Arsenal, win, right? So far for the Portuguese, 3 clean sheets coming off the 1-1 draw against Palace. I'd expect more of the same from Mourinho's Spurs side here. Kane and Son are capable of breaking forward. Liverpool's dodgy defense, maybe they get Matip back here. They finished the match against Fulham with Henderson and Fabinho as the center back pairing, which is not what you want to say. They are suspect at best there. Their injury list is longer than my arm. They will want a result after the disappointing performance against Fulham. A winner goes 3 points clear. Draw and Spurs remain ahead on goal difference. It's hard to imagine Mu having his team on the front foot. And it's hard to imagine Klopp not setting up to attack and having setting up deep lines himself.
Yeah, Liverpool lead the league in passes attempted. They have the most pressures in the final third. They have the most XG. They're very, very good this year, despite the injury list that you mentioned. Diogo Jota recently added to that for a long-term injury. Really
playing him in European and midweek was just. He's got to play somebody.
I have no issue with that. You play the sport to play the sport. You don't play the sport with cotton wrapped around you. And Klopp has that mentality for almost all of his players, and it hurts some, like Naby Keita. Questions of whether he'll be fit. He could be the kind of guy that I think you really
help unlock his team.
Die to see, because against Fulham, what do they struggle with? They struggle with breaking them down. The likes of Thiago and Keita. Thiago is basically a January signing at this point because he's going to be back, hopefully, for the Liverpool fans in January. And for Spurs, there is an argument that they are overperforming. They're about 6 goals over their XG. So they're scoring way more, and that's because it's Heung-min Son who has scored 6 goals more than his XG. That means that Harry Kane is not. He has 10 assists, yes, but he has 4 expected assists. So he's definitely not at a level that is sustainable because Son is going to come back down to earth eventually. And that's just
we've been saying that.
But that's just how things work. Over the entire season, that's how it's going to happen.
And how are they going to cope?
But the thing is, statistically, yes, he'll come down over the entire season, but this is a one-off match. They don't care about stats in 90 minutes. Stats don't matter in that. So if Son is still firing, if Kane is still at his high level, they could 100% end Liverpool's unbeaten run at home. The question for Liverpool is you got to get Mane firing again. He's had one of his longest droughts for them in a while. Salah got the penalty against Fulham.
He's got 5 goals from the spot this year.
And Firmino is just not playing well. He had a few games where he was good, and now his spot is secured for a long time because of Jota's injury, and now he's back to his kind of poor level that he was at for a while. For Liverpool, if they have Keita fit, I'd love to see Keita play because I think he's just a difference maker for them and could work to unlock a very good, disciplined Spurs side. I think I would favor Liverpool if they have a fit Matip and Keita. Big if. Otherwise, I think a draw is a very plausible result, especially because both sides. I think, yes, Klopp wants to play on the front foot, but he also doesn't want to fall off in the title race too early. I think he wants to leave themselves in a tight race. And there's really no loss to be gained by drawing with Spurs.
Well,
especially
there's
in the
2,000 fans that are going to be in the stands, right?
And we saw how they played against Wolves. So.
Yeah, made a difference. And it made a difference when they went to Fulham and drew.
Mm-hmm.
All right, last up, West Ham, Crystal Palace. Loud wrong times 2 again. This is what we said heading into the season. This is where I've got Palace dropping to the championship.
I got West Ham dropping. There's still 26 games left to be played. We're not wrong yet. We'll be wrong in a few months.
I think we're loud wrong.
Unless they come back. Unless they just seriously fall off.
They're both playing way better than either of us anticipated.
Yes.
So I had them stacked right there at 17-18.
Yes.
Couldn't be more wrong as of where they sit right now. Hammers are 6th on 20 points. Palace 11th on 17.
Yes.
West Ham winners of 4 of their last 5. Only the loss at home to United 3-1. Before that, 2-1 win over Leeds. Palace 2 wins, 2 losses, and a draw over 5 with the 1-1 draw against Spurs. Actually was a really good result for them. We talked a little bit about Eberechi and Benteke kind of rounding up into form and starting to play well together, while West Ham are they're a tough team to play, and it's largely down to Declan Rice and Thomas Souček and that pairing in midfield.
Yeah.
I mean, Declan Rice is maybe not quietly, but emerging as one of the best holders in
England. Yeah,
sure.
100%. And he's heavily linked I don't know heavily, but a lot of fans for United want him to be signed because he's young, he's English, and he's one of the best in the league. He's doing a great job for them. Both sides, I think it's going to be interesting because they're at a healthy level of where they're at sustainability-wise. West Ham about at their XG levels, which 20 goals scored. That's a really good amount in comparison to your opposition, but 15 conceded is not as good. So, and Crystal Palace, on the contrary, are a pretty good defensive side, and they've gotten some spark on the offensive end, and it was really interesting to see how they reacted to having some fans in that London derby on the weekend because they were hitting Spurs hard. It relied a lot on Vincent Guaita's wonders in between the sticks, but they're created a lot of chances, and they were taking it to Spurs, who are the current league leaders. So they'll have every reason to be confident. West Ham are on a great run of form themselves as well. They'll have only themselves to blame in that Man United match for why they haven't won 5 of their last 5. So, again, 5 great matches that are here. And we were talking beforehand about how many are going to be left off that we could have talked about for our 5. But it's going to be a great midweek as opposed to a weekend. And I think it's just going to be a great holiday season. And it's these kinds of matches which are, it feels like every single one, it just has so many implications for placement for all these sides.
Who would have thought that at this point? 6th and 11th.
I mean, definitely not us. If we said that we thought this, then we were clearly either lying then or lying now. And I think we would be lying now.
Loud wrong. That'll do it for us for look at week 13. Please do like, subscribe. Let us know what you think in the comments. Look for us on the Twitter. Jack, Conrad, this has been the 45. Take care now.